How you guys all doing today? Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiaga. Today, on October the 11th, getting geared up for Week 6, the remainder of Week 6 after it kicked off last night. And we're going to talk about the game last night between the Seahawks and the 49ers. A pretty entertaining game after the halftime period, and we're going to talk about it, the 49ers, how confident we are in them to hold on to that lead, and also, are we panicking a little bit on the Seattle Seahawks? That is coming up in just a few moments. Also, we're going to go through the decision by the New York Jets to downgrade Nathaniel Hackett and take him off play calling duties and promote their passing game coordinator, Todd Downing, to those responsibilities, plus some more topics down the line on today's show. Make sure to stick around for that for the remainder of the episode. But before we get started, if you guys weren't aware already, if you guys want to be part of this show, get involved with a question, an opinion, or any comment that you'd like to share, please don't hesitate to do that. We always want to hear your input and insight. It always makes the show better in our opinion, and we thrive off of your energy that you guys bring to the show, making it more interactive. So whether it's a quick comment, question, or opinion you'd like to share, please don't hesitate to share it now with our new Super Chat feature. Just click the $ at the bottom of the chat box to send in your Super Chat. In this way, it guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel, and we rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. Hit the Super Chat button, and let's keep this show as interactive and as exciting as possible. Make sure, again, to use that Super Chat feature, the new Super Chat button, and get involved with the show in any way you guys would like to on today's show. So with that now out of the way, we can talk about last night in what was a pretty entertaining game, I would say, just from the fact that it was a divisional game. We wanted to see some highs and lows and a lot of entertainment, and we certainly got that, at least mostly in the second half, I believe, because the 49ers extend their dominant run over the Seattle Seahawks recently with a 36-24 victory in Seattle last night. It's their 6th win in a row in this series, and now the 49ers are 3-3 on the year, and now they are first place in the division with this win, while the Seattle Seahawks drop out of first place, obviously, and now they lose their 3rd game in a row, and now are also 3-3 on the season. And San Francisco never trailed in this game, right from start to finish. They were always in the lead, or at least tied for whatever amount of time being. And it was a lot of moments I felt like it was kind of close. You saw the Seahawks kind of get things together, or by some miracle, you looked at that first half, and we're going to get into it. You look at that first half and you're thinking, I don't know if the Seahawks are going to get anything going, or you don't see how it's only 16-13 after that first half. But the second half proved to be a bit more entertaining, like I said. And looking at some of the performances that we got last night, looking at the winning side first, Brock Purdy, he finished with over 250 yards, 3 touchdowns on the day, and was 18 of 28. Jordan Mason had 9 carries for 73 yards and was looking very good to start the game, but he injured his shoulder and he came back to the sideline, but he hardly ever played in that second half for medical reasons, obviously. If he wasn't 100%, Kyle Shanahan clearly felt that he wasn't, so he was held off. And one of the guys that benefited mostly off of that was their rookie running back, Isaac Guerendo. He came in and had 10 carries right away, 99 yards, and San Francisco as a whole unit had 228 rushing yards total, with Kyle Juszczyk scoring the only rushing touchdown of the night. And Deebo Samuel also contributed with 3 receptions, 102 yards, and that long 76-yard touchdown as well. George Kittle having more of an offensive involved season, I believe, than years past, because I don't know exactly how many touchdowns he scored, but it feels like every time I watch him in these games, he's always at least scoring in the red zone. He's becoming one of their go-to guys in there, and he had 5 receptions for 58 yards and those 2 touchdowns, like I mentioned. And it's great to see. It's great to see if we talked about those red zone struggles, and if you can have Kittle in there really being a force like he has been over the last couple weeks, it's a great sign for them, and Brock Purdy as well, to have that reliable option. And then the other side with Geno Smith, another game where he just has to throw it every single play. It seems like he finished 3 of 52 for over 300 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions that end up being costly. And I'll mention Kenneth Walker because he had 14 carries for 32 yards, which it's not more as a fact to highlight it, but just more so to point it out as a concerning thing, because you look at the 49ers and they had nearly almost 200 more yards rushing overall, and Kenneth Walker couldn't even get up to like 50 or anything like that, or 100. So it is a problem. I think the Seahawks are becoming more notable that their running game as well as defending the run isn't something that is one of their strong suits. But again, they are missing some defensive linemen. I acknowledge that, but still, I need to see more out of that unit specifically, because Geno, the first 3 weeks have looked good, but now over the last 3 weeks, we're seeing more of these turnovers. And we're going to get to what Mike McDonald said on that. But looking at the game, like I said, looking at the recap of this game, it was a pretty bad start right out of the gate for the Seahawks. In that first half, they received the ball first, and they were actually putting together a solid drive. They got into the red zone while San Francisco was obviously defending, and we saw the first interception, right? Geno threw it to Mustafa, I want to say, was the rookie safety who was playing instead of Talanoa Hufanga. So he contributed right away, picked off Geno Smith. You have a turnover in the red zone to start the game. Not the way you want to do it. And then that was only one of the 6 possessions that Seattle had in the first half. And outside of that interception, they also fumbled in one of their drives by Laviska Shenault. He fumbled on a punt return or a kick return, I want to say. I forget which one it was, but he fumbled in one of their drives. They also had 3 punts in the first half. They really struggled to get any momentum outside of those turnovers, right? Not helping out in building that rhythm. And if it wasn't for that last drive where they kicked that field goal, they would have been held scoreless through the first half at home. And the 49ers would have been up 16-0 instead of 16-3. And the 49ers, while I'm saying the Seahawks didn't play great, the 49ers really didn't take too much advantage of it outside of that long touchdown, which I think it was more of an error than a great play by the 49ers. It was a good throw, I guess you could say, to be fair, not be too overcritical. But, if the guy really, I didn't think he was going to get there anyway. So for him to dive at it like that, I just felt like he was giving it up too easily. So that's why I feel like it was more on them. But regardless, they scored a touchdown. They still weren't that great in the red zone, at least in the first half. So that was a little bit concerning. But still, they were leading at halftime. And then after that, both teams each scored a touchdown right out of the gate in the second half, and it was 23-10. Then San Francisco punted, and the Seahawks scored another touchdown, and now it's 23-17. And it's starting to feel like maybe, I'm kind of rooting for the Seahawks here to see if we could get more excitement in this game, right? If they somehow, after that first half that they had, can they come back and get something going? But they never really got over the hump, and I think that's one of the problems that I had with this game. The Seahawks were so close, even despite the interceptions, the bad running game, and all that. They were still within a score. They had a chance when it was 23-17, like I said, to kind of take the lead there. But it was that killer drive where they were in the red zone again, they were starting a drive and they were in their own red zone trying to get out of their own half. And Geno threw another interception to, I want to say, another rookie for the 49ers. His name is escaping me, but still, that was a killer. That was a killer, right? That second interception. And then after that, the Seahawks kind of got something. They were putting together some drives, but you never really felt that it was going to get any better other than that situation. So the game ended up being 36-24, and now we get to these questions that I had in my head when the game concluded, right? The turnovers were a big problem, and right now, after winning 3 in a row and losing 3 in a row for the Seahawks, are you guys willing to sort of, sell that stock you guys had in the Seattle Seahawks? For a lot of people that were really believing in them, me being one of them, after their loss to the Lions, I was thinking, it if there was ever such thing as a good loss, that would have been it. You go toe-to-toe pretty much with the Lions, and you come close on the road. Not a lot of teams can say that they do that. But now I'm starting to get, like, my hands are starting to get a little clammy or something like that, right? It is starting to get a bit nerve-wracking with this team. They are 3-3. It's not like they're 1-4 or something like that, but it's not a good sign. And Mike McDonald, like I said, he mentioned the turnovers being one of their biggest problems. They now lead the NFL with the most giveaways with 10 after last night with 3 more. And, they got to cut that out because, like I mentioned, the running game, there's such a disparity when they're trying to defend it, and if they're not producing enough on their end, they can't turn the ball over like that because you look at their last 3 games, they've been outrushed by their opponents 519 yards rushing to 287 over their last 3 games. And when that's the case, yeah, you could still be in these close games if Geno and the offense has a great passing game, but those turnovers, the margin of error with those turnovers, if Geno's going to throw the ball 45 times a game, you can't turn the ball over maybe only once if you're going to have to do it, no more than that, because then at that point, the rhythm's sort of gone, you become one-dimensional, and then it doesn't help anybody. So because of that, that's where I'm feeling with the Seahawks. I'm a little nervous about them, but I'm not completely selling on them right now. And as for the 49ers, it was a needed win. They certainly wanted to get back to at least 500, obviously, for the caliber of team that they are. But to answer a question like if I think they're going to just run away with the division, I don't think so, because the Cardinals have proven to be a very tough opponent, very stubborn opponent, if you will. The Seahawks are still 3-3. I'm not throwing in the towel on them, obviously. And the Rams are talented if they had their guys playing, right? I believe that those guys are obviously that important, and they beat the 49ers already, and the Cardinals smacked the Rams. So it's very up and down with this division. It's awesome to see because you don't know what you're going to get, but I don't think this has solidified anything with either of these two teams. We are seeing some more signs, positive for the 49ers and a little bit more negative for the Seahawks, but I don't think anything solidified. The 49ers jump up to the lead, but that could change this Sunday if the Cardinals win. Now they're in first place, so keep an eye on that. It looks like the NFC West is going to be a wild division to follow, as well as other divisions as well across the NFL, but we're going to leave that there. It was a great Thursday night game to start off the week, but now we're going to talk about the New York Jets a little bit more and their decision to name Todd Downing, their pass game coordinator, as their new play caller. Nathaniel Hackett's still on the team. He had those responsibilities, but their new head coach, Jeff Ulbrich, decided to take him off of that. We're going to go into why that is, what went into that decision, and what does it say about the Jets by just keeping Nathaniel Hackett and firing Robert Saleh after this latest development. So we'll get into that. There's a lot more to come on today's show. We'll be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
We are back now on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to talk a little bit more on the latest developments with the New York Jets. We obviously know that they're going to have their new interim head coach, Jeff Ulbrich, their defensive coordinator, now promoted to the interim head coaching position, but with still, me not sitting well with this decision that Robert Saleh got fired. A question that came up when Robert Saleh was fired was, in my opinion, if he's a defensive head coach, right? He was the defensive coordinator for the 49ers. If that's the case, and if you were going to point out the main problem with the Jets, it was probably going to be the offense, right? With Aaron Rodgers, with Garrett, with Brees, with their new offensive line. Why was their offense struggling, right? The defense wasn't really having any glaring issues. And with that being the case, and that being the biggest issue, in my opinion, wouldn't there be any change to the offensive side of the ball? Not necessarily the head coach, who probably is more involved on the defensive side of the ball. It didn't make sense to me. That was one of the reasons why I wasn't such a big fan of this. And, was Saleh's firing going to really change anything on the offensive side of the ball? I don't know how much he really contributed to that side. He might have been in every meeting or something. I don't know. But based on what we know about him, his resume, and what made him successful, those two don't add up. So that's why I was a little bit confused. That's why I thought this news was fake. And then we got more reports after Jeff Ulbrich was named the interim head coach that the offensive issues needed to be addressed, right? They were too glaring not to. And so some of the reports that came out after that were that there was a consideration between Ulbrich and the Jets overall to potentially make some changes to the play callers, who was going to call plays on that offensive side of the ball, to spark some sort of change and get it rolling a little bit more, right? And that's exactly what ended up happening, because yesterday Jeff Ulbrich made the announcement and said that Nathaniel Hackett, their current offensive coordinator, was not going to be the play caller anymore, but rather it was going to be Todd Downing. Their passing game and quarterbacks coach was going to be now responsible with calling these plays for the New York Jets. And it's funny and kind of ironic, because a few reports around Robert Saleh's firing initially sort of mentioned how Robert Saleh already had in mind that he was either going to fire Nathaniel Hackett or was at least thinking about it, and he couldn't get to that chance because Woody Johnson came down, and I'm sure you guys saw the reports that said Robert Saleh was sort of like blindsided by this decision to fire him, and he wasn't expecting it. So, the Jets almost jumped him before he could get to that decision. Whether or not that's true, if he was actually going to fire Nathaniel Hackett, that was what was allegedly going to happen, right, based on these reports. So, still, with that being the case, there was some other reports after that said that owner Woody Johnson was still frustrated with the offense and Nathaniel Hackett specifically, and also Robert Saleh. So, you could see why he just fired Robert Saleh anyway, and now why we're seeing some of these changes with Nathaniel Hackett, which still don't sit well with me, but I'll get to that after I mention this next point, because in his announcement, Jeff Ulbrich mentioned that Aaron Rodgers understood and was very supportive of this change, sort of for anybody thinking that Nathaniel Hackett was sort of untouchable and was just there because of his relationship with Aaron Rodgers. This sort of backs up the opposing side of that. And Rodgers also said that basically he spoke with Jeff Ulbrich and knew that there would be some changes on the offensive side of the ball, and one being probably that the play calling duties were going to change, and that he felt it was likely that Jeff Ulbrich was going to go ahead and demote Nathaniel Hackett. So, there is that side of it, and it kind of helps out my point a little bit, because I was going to say I don't believe that Nathaniel Hackett's only there because of Aaron Rodgers, but that would be a lie. That would be too ignorant and naive to say. But what I'm trying to say is that I feel like when it's so obvious like this, and that the offense is so glaringly just needing a bit of help, a bit of just new integration into this offense to kind of spark it a little bit, it feels like it's so obvious to have to change Nathaniel Hackett. And with these reports now that Rodgers was supporting this idea now, I felt like that was appropriate, and that I wouldn't expect anything else from Aaron Rodgers to support Jeff Ulbrich now, instead of just, having his guys back or something like that with Nathaniel Hackett. But still, I can't help but think about if this was already sort of a consideration that Nathaniel Hackett was possibly going to be demoted, by Robert Saleh, or that he was possibly going to lose his responsibilities anyway by manner of Woody Johnson doing it, or just eventually losing his position, wouldn't why still fire Robert Saleh is my question still. If the offense is the problem and Nathaniel Hackett really isn't sitting well with too many people, and there's these, we even saw it in the offseason, some reports that were saying that he could be, or that the Jets were considering bringing in somebody else to kind of alleviate some of his responsibilities. And with that all being the case leading up to the production that we've seen on the field now, why fire Robert Saleh, right? It doesn't make sense to me. If it's just based on the field and what you're seeing on the field is that the offense is really struggling, I don't get why you fire Robert Saleh, right? Unless there is issues behind the scenes, that makes sense, but no one's really said anything like that. Woody Johnson has said that, he's been kind of thinking about this decision for a while now, and he felt that the team needed this. But, based on what Sauce Gardner was saying, obviously one of the players for the Jets, he said in an interview that, if I'm being honest, we're doing it for him still, referring to Robert Saleh, how they're playing for him in a sense, right? Like they weren't necessarily on board with him being fired and almost not understanding it in a way elsewhere as well. And I talked about some reports that said that the defensive players were shocked by this decision, and I can't just ignore the fact of Nathaniel Hackett and also what is he going to do now, right? Because I don't know what his responsibilities are going to be now going forward, but at least Robert Saleh contributed to the defensive aspect of it, right? And him having a great relationship with the players. What is Nathaniel Hackett contributing right now, now that his main duty has been taken away? It makes zero sense to me, because I didn't agree with the firing already, because it has nothing to do with addressing the main issue anyway. It has no correlation really, because Robert Saleh, again, I don't know how involved he was, but his expertise was on the defense, and the defense was playing pretty well. And now the offense, people will say it's run by Hackett, it's run by Aaron Rodgers. You're not going to bench Aaron Rodgers, obviously, right? But why not just stick with the offense and maybe talk about it with Nathaniel Hackett, or not necessarily fire him, right? We're not advocating for him to just get fired, but change the responsibilities and just keep Robert Saleh, because now I don't think that changing the leader, the presumed leader, right, like it is in most organizations, right? If you think Aaron Rodgers is the leader of this team, is controlling this team, everybody can think what they want, but changing your head coach, I think, is never really a great thing, especially with the level of expectations that this Jets team has, right? You're going to tell me that they're going to try to trade for Aaron Rodgers. They're going to try to go through this hectic area now, this hectic process of having Jeff Ulbrich in there, firing their head coach, promoting another guy in, and this team is supposed to make it to the Super Bowl. They're talented, but I don't think they're going to be able to maneuver through all these distractions to just get to the Super Bowl now. It's not the adequate way to go about it, and the performances haven't been there, and now you add on this extra stuff off of the field. Desperate times call for desperate measures. I do acknowledge that, but it feels like it's too much. It feels like it's too panicked right now. Like the Jets are fumbling everything away right now, trying to resolve everything, but just stumbling over themselves. And I wasn't a fan of the firing, obviously, and so now with this being the decision that is going to happen, Todd Downing, if you didn't know, he is the passing game coordinator and the quarterbacks coach for the Jets, and he was previously the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans in 2021 and 2022, where they made the postseason in 2021. So that's his most recent stint in calling plays or being that high up the totem pole, if you will. And what I want to see from them now is, if Aaron Rodgers is open to this now, I hope he is. He better be, because I want to see Todd Downing really bring a different idea to this offense, right? What would really make no sense is if they fired Robert Saleh, obviously, like they did, demoted Nathaniel Hackett, and now they have Todd Downing in there, but this offense still looks exactly the same, then we really have no idea what we're doing, right? If we're going to fire the coach, keep the offensive coordinator, demote him, bring up another guy, and it still looks the exact same, then all of what you just did was literally for nothing. It was for nothing then if everything looks the same. I want to see Todd Downing trying to incorporate something new, bringing something over from his time in Tennessee, what worked there, making this offense more mobile, more motion-based, more trying to shift the defense, not just having them sit and run directly at Aaron Rodgers, having them try to move side to side with play actions and things like that, zone runs and everything like that. So I want to see him try to incorporate something new. I don't want to see the same vanilla offense that has been pretty predictable, I guess you could say, over the last 5 weeks now in the NFL. So that is what I wanted to say about that and what this move kind of says about Nathaniel Hackett, staying on this team, and what can we expect from this offense going forward, right? Hopefully it looks different. I hope and I need it to look different, not because I'm a fan or anything like that, just because I think the Jets definitely needed to look different. They can't just put out the same product out there, because not only did they go through this entire hassle, but they are still within the reach of the division, which is crazy to say. They're only a game behind of the Bills. So if they win, they're in first place. Wouldn't that be just like the funniest thing out of everything, that they just pop in the first place after everything that happened in this last week? It's still a possibility, so they need to get it going now. They've been very fortunate that the Bills have also dropped these last couple games, so it's going to be a huge game on Monday. Everyone's definitely going to tune into that when we get there, obviously, but for right now, talking about contending teams and being in first place and how that could affect things, we're going to move over to the Houston Texans. Clearly first place in their division, but they've done it without their running back, Joe Mixon, and he could have the potential to play this week after not playing for the last 3 to 4 weeks. And he actually spoke about the injury and really went on a tangent about the player safety around the NFL and how it doesn't add up in his mind. And he had a whole thing to say about it that we're going to break down in the next segment. So we'll be right back after this.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Back here now on the show to talk about the Houston Texans a little bit here, and specifically the running back Joe Mixon. I think certainly it's going to sound funny because the Texans are 4-1. It doesn't feel like they're needing anybody to come back, right? They've had just as good a start as anybody. But if you guys looked at the first couple weeks and how Joe Mixon was playing, he was really going off. But I think what he was doing to the Houston Texans, really completing them, whereas now, Cam Akers, their other running back, who I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, they're doing all right, but I feel like still, it feels like something's missing, especially after seeing the first 2 weeks by Joe Mixon and how well he was doing. He recorded like almost 160 yards on the ground against the Colts that first week, and really, right off of the bat, he hit the ground running with this team, and I felt like he completed them quite perfectly, but unfortunately he suffered that injury, and we haven't seen him since week 2 against the Chicago Bears, where unfortunately he injured his ankle because of a hip drop tackle from Chicago's TJ Edwards. And because of that, the latest update that we have on Joe Mixon was that he returned to practice yesterday, and I haven't seen any updates on it, but he said he was supposed to practice today, and then he would give more of an inclination of whether or not he was going to play or not this upcoming Sunday and make his return. So That's exciting to at least see him back on the field. But he has missed about a month now with that injury, and obviously Joe Mixon was upset about it because the NFL made it a big deal this entire offseason, right, with the idea that hip drop tackles were going to make it impossible for the defense. Everyone was freaking out online, saying how the refs were just going to be throwing flags all over the place, and it was going to be really bad for the defenders, right? But up until now, I haven't seen any live games that I've been watching anything be stopped for a hip drop tackle or anything like that. So it's been quite the opposite of what people thought, but because of that, the idea is to still outlaw this tackle, right? They want to get it out of the NFL, but I haven't seen that many flags be thrown other than maybe one, I think, and I don't really remember what it was, but I feel like I've seen one. But regardless of that, this one was one of the more obvious ones, and ironically, this tackle by TJ Edwards on Joe Mixon was one of the ones not called. It seemed like the most obvious, but it was not called. Instead, they just fined TJ Edwards $16,000 afterwards, and that's important for a later point that we're going to bring up. But people thought that this was going to be a big deal, like I said, and until right now, we haven't really seen it, completely take over in games, which I think is good. You don't want that, obviously, to happen, but it felt like the refs were going to be a bit more strict about it, or at least call the ones that were obvious, like this one with TJ Edwards and Joe Mixon. And of course, it feels so ironic and so frustrating, you'd imagine, for Joe Mixon, because they made such a big deal out of it, and when the moment comes for you to throw the flag, they don't throw the flag, and Joe Mixon's now sidelined for a month, and TJ Edwards is only fined $16,000. For context, for the players, it isn't that much, but still, it's frustrating, right, to say the least, right, for a guy like Joe Mixon. And he made that evident in some of his recent social media activity when last week the NFLPA's Twitter account, X account, whatever you'd like to call it, posted something about the recent media access debate, right, about whether or not media should do interviews in the locker room. I'm sure you guys have heard about it. Mixon replied to that Twitter account, and he said that player safety is what matters and should be the focus, not media access. And then yesterday, he spoke with the media in one of his press conferences during, or actually after practice, I want to say, and he had this to say to kind of vent his frustrations a little bit, like he did on Twitter, but now also directly to the media. He said, I was the number one leader in rushing. I was stopped because of that weak, fill in the blank, hip drop tackle. I can't do nothing about it. It's frustrating. It is what it is. And then after that, Joe Mixon really went off on a tangent, right, to talk about not only his frustrations with the hip drop tackle not being flagged and only fining TJ Edwards $16,000, but also he went on to kind of mention how the whole fine system is sort of backwards, right, in his opinion, on how he was kind of stressing it in this next statement. He said that the fines to guys like Josh Jacobs, like Zach Charbonnet for the Seattle Seahawks, for Nico Collins also, I'm not sure if you guys have seen it, these instances where they called unnecessary roughness on the offensive player, the running back, like, say, Josh Jacobs, right? There was a game, I want to say against the Colts, where he was sort of running directly at a defender, and he just tucked his head like this, and it made contact with the defender first, and they called him for unnecessary roughness, or at least they fined him. They fined him a lot of money for that hit, and we're getting to a point now where we're calling unnecessary roughness, or we're fining players a lot on offense for unnecessary roughness calls. We're entering a new territory now of kind of the level of ridiculousness that this is getting to with some of these calls. And Joe Mixon clearly wasn't a fan of that either, and he went off on a spiel here. If you guys just bear with me here and see what he says. He goes, you got guys out here protecting themselves from hits, and they are getting fined $45,000 and $50,000, and for an illegal hip drop tackle, they're getting fined $16,000 when it's supposed to be an emphasis. It's supposed to be taken out of the game, and so obviously the priorities ain't right with what's going on. And I would agree with him. The question of, is he making sense? Is this a valid point to have now? And is it something worth talking about with not just the hip drop tackles and the player safety, but also the idea of the amount of flags that we're seeing? I feel like, because it's not only the fines and not calling the hip drop tackles, it's the idea of everything else around it, right? The context with what it comes with. Because I'm seeing NFL players being fined, being, not ridiculed, but, being called out, I guess, by the NFL by these fines. Like Alan Lazard, right? He had his first down celebration. He was kind of like pointing like this or something, kind of signaling a first down. And it's resembled, like a gun, I guess you could say. A firearm, if you will. And they fined him a lot of money for that. And it seems so, ridiculous that the priorities, like Joe Mixon says, right, they're really focusing and trying to lock down these celebrations, right, that resemble firearms or that look like someone shooting something like a gun with their hands or something like that, or a bow and arrow or something like that, any weapon-like thing. It feels like the NFL are really to the T on trying to take that out of the game. And I understand if it's so obvious, throw the flag, fine them, whatever you want. But if it's, I don't think it should be that overblown, right? They've got to chill a little bit with some of these flags. And if they do find them, I don't think it should be anywhere near what we're seeing for that hip drop tackle, right? Because now we're talking about the context and how they relate. If a hip drop tackle is $16,000, and that's a big problem, right? Because you need these players to be healthy, obviously, right? Not being injured by these sort of tackles. That should be one of the highest fines probably in, their fine system, right? Not $16,000. And then for other guys, like we mentioned with Josh Jacobs and Zach Charbonnet and Nico Collins, bracing themselves as a natural reaction, as a natural instinct to potentially a big hit from a defender, and they're the ones getting called for unnecessary roughness or getting fined $50,000, it shouldn't be that big of a difference, first of all. And if anything, it shouldn't really be called at all or fined at all, finable offense at all. To compare that to the hip drop tackle and have it be $30,000 more for, bracing yourself for a big hit, that makes no sense, and it feels like it's backwards to me. For players to get low and brace themselves and not be vulnerable to a big hit by just standing up straight and holding their head up like this, they're more at a risk of getting hit and hurting themselves, right? If they're just running up like this and their head's up, not tucking it down and bracing for a big hit, that makes no sense, and it feels like the NFL is prioritizing, like Joe Mixon said, other silly things than prioritizing, one of their bright stars in Joe Mixon as a running back, finding a way to take those hip drop tackles out. They didn't throw a flag on the play, so it didn't affect the game at all. And also, TJ Edwards was only fined $16,000. So it feels like they're not looking at the right situations appropriately, and they're being too overbearing with some, and the other ones that need the most attention, they're not really getting that at this point in time. And that it seems like not a lot of people are talking about it too much. It's always about the celebrations, which seems pretty ridiculous. And the media access one is interesting. That one I would disagree with, but I think this one's a bigger one that Joe Mixon, I would say that he is right, and it feels like the NFL is hovering and just trying to find these guys some way, shape, or form to fine them for silly things like celebrations, which, again, if they're too over the top, then yeah, it makes sense. But if they're barely anything, or if they could be interpreted any which way, don't make it seem like they're shooting a firearm or something like that. It's not a case of they should be allowed to do anything, but come on, we gotta reel it in a little bit more if you're the NFL, and maybe pay attention to some of these hip drop tackles or anything like that. We don't want it to be overbearing as well. Let's find a happy medium here with these calls and the player safety and things like that. I thought Joe Mixon made a very good point, and in comparing those two finable offenses. And it seems backwards to me, honestly, that he was hurt, nothing really came about it, and he's had to miss a month where, like he said, he was leading the NFL in rushing and could have been on his way to one of the best years of his career. He still could do that, but it's a month removed now. So it's unfortunate. Hopefully he comes back and plays this week and we can see him back out there on the field. But that was something I wanted to highlight because it was certainly interesting to me how he brought that up. But we're going to move on now from the Houston Texans, leave that there for a second, and come back after the break and talk about the Eagles. They're coming off of their bye week. Jalen Hurts had some things to say in his press conference leading up to this game against the Browns on the improvements he wants to make, a meeting that he had with Nick Sirianni during their bye week to address some of the off-the-field things. That is coming up right after this break. We'll be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Jumping back into the action now and looking at one of the more interesting cases around the NFL heading into this week. We highlighted this matchup yesterday between the Eagles and the Cleveland Browns, and specifically Jalen Hurts and Deshaun Watson, two quarterbacks that have received a lot of criticism this year. And I mentioned their bye weeks in the discussion yesterday, or at least the Eagles bye week, right? I'm usually not a fan of the early bye weeks this early in the season, week 5, and then to have, what's the math on that? 11 to 12 more weeks after that to play back to back to back to back, right? etc. I'm usually not a fan of that because it feels like it's too much heading into the playoffs to ramp it up even more after all those string of games. I would not be a fan of that if I was an Eagles fan, but I don't think any other team, ironically, needed an early bye more so than the Philadelphia Eagles needed it, right? Because after getting embarrassed again in Tampa Bay to the Buccaneers, the post-game comments that we had from Jalen Hurts, the injuries, all the criticisms at the Eagles defense for missing tackles, Jalen Hurts for not performing as he should to the level that everybody expected him to. Also, just everything, right? Nick Sirianni, Kellen Moore, not running it enough, everything. They were saying everything about the Eagles after that loss to the Buccaneers, and it felt overbearing that this team needed to get away, needed to be not talked about by everybody, it seems like, in the media, based on their performances. So now they have an opportunity coming off of their bye to kind of reset everything and make a statement, I believe, truly, because Jalen Hurts spoke about it this week in one of his press conferences, talking about improving, and he wasn't looking further than anybody but himself on what needs to improve and what needs to change. And I thought he had a couple interesting quotes here that I wanted to share with you guys, talking about, obviously improving not only just this team, but himself. The first thing he said was, I think it starts with me in terms of us playing clean football. I touch the ball every play. There's a ton of responsibility in that, and I love the position because of that, and an opportunity to set the pace, set the tempo for everything else on the field. And it's true. It's good to see that he's acknowledging that now, obviously, because it could be, obviously, when you're talking about a quarterback and you're talking about maybe turning the ball over, right? That's one of their main issues, and we're going to get to that. But also, admitting it is something else completely separate, and actually doing it's a very hard thing to do. And for Jalen Hurts to come out and say, he needs to play better, I think that's a great way to start, not only this statement, but just getting back to work on Sunday when they play the Cleveland Browns at home as well, coming off of that bye. It's going to be a great opportunity for them to really get things going for themselves. And it's funny that he mentioned the pace in this statement, right? He mentioned setting the pace, setting the tempo for everything else on the field. And that's something that I didn't know was so poor for the Eagles, right? For Jalen Hurts to obviously say it, I'm sure he didn't mean it directly, but anyway, it is something that they desperately need to get better, because the Eagles are last in first quarter yards per game in the entire NFL. They're dead last in that category. The amount of yards they average in just the first quarter, they're averaging 44 yards in the first quarter so far through 4 games in their season. And their third down conversion percentage in the first quarter is an abysmal 11%. So they're not getting anything from that first quarter, right? They're not doing anything good whatsoever. You know, the last game, not really running it at all. Now their third down conversion throughout all 4 games is really bad to start. Their yards per quarter, I guess you could say, in the first quarter is really bad as well. So when they step on the field, they're not stepping on the field with the right foot at all, to say the least. So that needs to change. They need to change that pace, obviously, to get going faster and not be down a touchdown or just be down in general starting the second quarter, right? You want to avoid that as much as possible. And to that point, they're the only team in the NFL to not have scored a single point in the first quarter yet, which is nuts. Not even I always think it's mind-blowing when teams haven't scored a touchdown in their first drive. But then when you really think about it, that's a little bit harder, right? To get together a whole drive and, you know, to actually score a touchdown in your first drive of a game. It's not as easy. Some teams make it look that easy, but it's not as easy as, you know, scoring a single point in the first quarter. You've been held to 0 in the first quarter each and every game is a problem. For how talented this team is, that can't happen at all. To not even score a field goal is insane. So that obviously needs to change. And that's a reason why against Tampa Bay, I couldn't understand for the life of me why Saquon was getting his 3rd or 4th touch of the game in that second quarter. Insane that statement, right? Especially because you have no Devontae Smith, no A.J. Brown. I know Kellen Moore's calling the plays, and I don't know if that's directly what they wanted to do, but like that's another thing that can't happen, right? You have Saquon. Even when you have Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, in my opinion, he should touch the ball before, I would even say before any of the other guys touch the ball. I would give him the ball at least 3 to 4 times first, and then I would throw my first pass. That's how I think they should do it in a couple of these games. But then for not to have Devontae and A.J. Brown, and you're still throwing it and not giving him the ball, like, what are we doing? What are we doing with that sort of idea heading into this game against Tampa Bay? And I couldn't understand it. It seems backwards that they're trying to set up the run game based off of the pass instead of how everybody usually does it, setting up the run game to set up the pass. Regardless of that, regardless of what the reasons are for that, that was what it was against Tampa Bay, adding to the reason why that looks so bad. And the turnovers and the giveaways are also another problem that this team has had so far through the year, because not only are you struggling in that first quarter, you're not scoring any points. Now, say you're behind and you're trying to catch up, you're ignoring the run even more, and you have Jalen Hurts trying to throw it even more, and we're throwing more turnovers, right? Because now you're down. Now the opposing team knows that you're going to try and catch up, and you become so predictable that you establish no rhythm with just passing it every other down and sprinkling in the run, where it should be the other way. They should sprinkle in some of the passes instead of just being so pass heavy. It's something I still don't understand, going back to that Saquon point. And right now, in terms of turnovers, Philadelphia is tied for 3rd in the amount of giveaways, and obviously it's frustrating, and it seems like it carries over to the post-game conferences, right? When you hear Jalen Hurts make a comment like with Nick Sirianni and how they try to address the team's struggles over the break, and all he says is, "We have our moments," right? And that quote seems to have been addressed based on what Jalen Hurts said in his next statement when he mentioned Nick Sirianni. He said, I'm happy and fortunate that we were able to come together in harmony and have the same goal in mind and try to get this thing right. I have a ton of confidence in him, a ton of confidence in what he brings, and everything he's been able to accomplish. And it sounds great. It sounds like it has been at least addressed, right? They haven't just been giving each other the cold shoulder or anything like that. They've been proactive in trying to change this for the better of the entire team, right? And that obviously needed to happen. You couldn't have this dynamic between a quarterback and a head coach going forward. It just cripples everything you're trying to do, right? If that relationship can't at least be respectful, then there's no point in even talking about anything else, because that has to be there at least. And it's great that they've addressed it now. It seems like they've at least gotten closer to being on the same page. It doesn't mean they have to like each other, but to have that conversation, I think, was good for this team. And now, talking about what I want to see out of them going forward, and in this game on Sunday against the Browns, where they have a great opportunity, like I said, playing at home, after their bye week, having extra preparation, but also having a Browns team that is really lacking confidence. They're 1-4. They're desperate to get something going, and it is a great chance now for the Eagles to go in there and handle their business and get back to over a 500 record. So what I think they should do and what I would love to see in this game right away would be less turnovers. Obviously, if they can have a turnover-free game for Jalen Hurts especially, that's a great way to just get out of your own way and not make it harder on yourself to get things going quicker. And also, you have to use the running game early. I'm tired of seeing that be the storyline every single week where this team doesn't play well. Why aren't they running the ball? That always seems to be one of the main reasons. Eliminate that. Run the heck out of the ball on this defense that has good players on each level of it. But if you can establish that run, because the Eagles have a great offensive line, it'll make facing this defense a lot easier when they're tired, when we get into the third quarter and you're still running it. It opens up a lot of passing options, and off of that, it makes it easier for Jalen Hurts, because one of the problems people mention with him is that he holds the ball for too long. And why does he hold the ball for too long? Because they're not running it. Teams know that he's going to pass it, and now he's just sitting back there trying to read these coverages, trying to register everything out in front of him, and he's holding the ball for too long. He's getting strip sacked. He's trying to throw interceptions, or he is throwing interceptions. And that's what happens when you hold on to it too long. When you run the ball and you have teams overcompensating to stop it, it opens up a lot more coverages for your great wide receivers. It lightens up the box, or it makes the box heavier, and it lightens up the secondary for you to make easier throws for yourself, not trying to throw into these tight pockets because the defense knows that you're trying to pass the ball. It'll help out Jalen. It'll help out this team look a lot more better and more efficient as well. And I want to see also an efficient run game. First, it'll make it easier for Hurts, like I said. And on the defensive side of the ball, too, they're not going to get as tired, because I felt like for as much as people criticize the missed tackles, and that is a personnel thing, they were on the field a lot. And in that Tampa Bay weather and in the heat and just being on the field for that long, you were going to get more, or I should say less, discipline from those guys. The tackling is going to be sloppier, so helping your defense out as well is going to make this entire team look better. Those are just some things I want to see. They should win this game, but playing well, I think, is going to be much more important for this team, for their confidence. Getting A.J. Brown back, Devontae Smith, and those guys contributing should be a great game for them, hopefully, on Sunday to get this thing going again. Because like a lot of teams, they haven't looked necessarily great, but they're right there within the division, right? They're only a game behind the Commanders right now, technically. So if they can get this win, they're going to be right there with the Cowboys based on that. And we're going to leave that topic there. The Eagles trying to get a big win this upcoming weekend. And talking about getting big wins this upcoming weekend, we're going to mention the second part of yesterday's initial first part of the game picks for Week 6. We're going to finish it off here with the second half of them, talking about the Cowboys and the Lions game, talking about some other games that should raise a lot of interest based on the situations of these teams. So we're going to get back to that segment after this break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining me here on this last segment of today's show, and we're going to finish off today's show and the week entirely with finishing off the segment from yesterday, the first half of our game picks for Week 6. We got part 2 for you guys here on this last segment, so we're going to jump right into it and talk about one of the first matchups I have on here for you guys would be this contest between, there we go, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New Orleans Saints. Another NFC South matchup between two very fascinating teams because there's a lot surrounding these two teams personnel-wise. Obviously, the biggest one being Spencer Rattler has been announced as the starter for this upcoming game, with Derek Carr being diagnosed as most likely out for this game. The injury designation, from my understanding, doesn't have him ruled out yet, but the initial reports said that he was going to miss a couple weeks. So because of that, Spencer Rattler was announced as the starter, and head coach Dennis Allen announced that this week instead of their backup quarterback last week. I want to say it was Hayner, the quarterback that came in for Derek Carr. Spencer Rattler didn't get any action against the Chiefs in that game, but now he is going to be deemed the starter, another rookie that's going to make his debut alongside Drake May. So Tampa Bay is also having some interesting things to kind of work out because they're coming off of an overtime loss to the Atlanta Falcons 8 days ago, so they've had a little bit more rest, and because of that, it has allowed some of these guys like Kalijah Kancey, Antoine Winfield to potentially make their returns, make their debuts on this upcoming game against the Saints, and it's huge because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, while their offense is great, while it looks great with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Baker playing very well, the defense and the defensive showing overall in the game against the Falcons basically wasn't there. It looks like they were just playing 7-on-7, and they were just seeing who could score more points. That's how bad they were missing Kalijah Kancey, how bad they were missing Antoine Winfield, and now if they could have them back for this week, it's going to make a big difference, and definitely going forward, having those guys back is going to be huge. So for this game, I got to go with Tampa Bay. It's going to be in New Orleans. That's going to help Spencer Rattler a little bit more, but for a rookie quarterback to come in with a team that's on a 3-game losing streak, and I don't know if the Saints can just simply keep up with this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, which I know it's probably going to be firing on all cylinders after the loss that they had last week. They definitely felt that they should have won. I feel like they're going to come out firing, and I just feel like it's a lot. It's a lot to ask for Spencer Rattler in his first game. So I'm going to go with the Buccaneers to win this contest over the Saints. Then, moving down the line, another divisional game, the Indianapolis Colts traveling to Cincinnati, and the storyline with these two quarterbacks, ironically, was that they were facing some injuries heading from last week. Anthony Richardson also dealing with an oblique injury, and Will Levis dealing with a shoulder injury that he suffered before their bye week this past weekend on Monday Night Football against the Miami Dolphins. But according to reports, I haven't seen any injury designations on them. They should be ready to go by this week's game, and it's two quarterbacks that definitely not need to get, or Will Levis needs to get it going, certainly. But Anthony Richardson, he has been part of a great performance in that game against Houston. They didn't win, but he wowed everybody with those throws that he was making. So we've seen some good, we've seen some bad, like the Packers game as well. So it's a game where he just needs to find his bearings a little bit. He needs to kind of slow down and really analyze things a little bit better and not be so frantic, right? Because I feel with Joe Flacco, this team with Joe Flacco felt a lot more under control. And Ashley, welcome to the show. Can the Seahawks win? If you mean like the division, if you mean the division, I think that they can. They already played last night though, and they lost in a great game, but they lost last night. So if you're referring to the division, I certainly think so. They're pretty much tied for first place, and they've shown some good potential. So if you're referring to the division, I certainly think that they can win it. Also, the division certainly. The division, they could certainly win it if they could just cut down on the turnovers a little bit more over the last couple weeks, they're certainly in the race. I'm not ruling them out completely whatsoever. But in this game with the Colts and the Titans, this is my first time on your live. Hopefully you can stay here and join us each and every weekday. But with this game, the Colts, the Titans, there are some injuries to look out for as well, because the Colts wide receiver Michael Pittman looks to be set to be out for a couple of weeks, so that's a big miss there. And for the Titans, they're also dealing with some injuries just carrying over from past couple weeks, so those are things to monitor. And Indianapolis is now also 0-2 in the AFC South, and they can't afford another loss also. So it's the first divisional game for Tennessee as well, and it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one because with the divisional games, it's so hard to pick one, and I think for certain divisions it makes it even harder as well. Because these two teams are so similar in a way that the offense can show you something one week, but then other times there's a lot more deficiencies. So with this game, me not being sold entirely with Anthony Richardson yet, and also not Will Levis, to be fair, either. There's probably not going to be a Jonathan Taylor in this game either. I'm going to go with the Titans because it is their first divisional game, and I think coming off of that bye, they should be looking a bit better. Ashley, will you have the Chiefs game live next Sunday? We actually, like the weekends, we don't do any of the live shows, but that could be something we could try, I'm sure, at some point in the NFL season. I'm sure doing like a live, well, we can't show the games actually, so I take that back. We can't show the lives on here. We could react to it and we could have a discussion in it if you guys would be down for that, but we actually can't show anything, so yeah, it would just be a conversation, just reacting to it. I'm sure we could probably do that at some point if I brought it up, but that's a good point to make. And moving on to some of these other games, another divisional game, the Chargers taking on the Denver Broncos. Defense with both of these two. Both have two of the most, I think, pesky and annoying defenses, and I don't think anyone should be surprised because of who the coaches are. And it's a good thing. I say it as a good thing because it's great to have those defenses, right? It's been huge for them in a lot of these games. So Jim Harbaugh going up against Sean Payton, two of the most experienced guys, experienced football minds in the NFL. It's a tough one to call again because Denver, coming off of their best performance on offense, the Chargers are coming off of a bye, so they should have a lot more of their guys available to them. Denver has more passing attributes, some more things that I like about their passing game, but Los Angeles has the run game, which I think is better. So it's really hard to pick one. It's hard to pick one because both defenses are great as well. But I think I'm going to go with the Chargers because I feel like they're a bit more advanced, a bit more mature, right, with where they are. Because Bo Nix, obviously a rookie, I think they're still trying to find what makes him great and what they can do to help him out as much as possible. Where the Chargers with Justin Herbert, it's a little bit more established. I find more confidence in that, so I'm going to go with them. I think the Chargers take this one on the road. And also, now moving on to the other side, one of the more intriguing games of the entire week. Like I said, I think the best game is going to be the Commanders and the Ravens, but this game is right up there as well because this is a rematch of last year's great game, but very controversial game in Dallas once again, where I'm sure you guys remember the offensive lineman for the Lions said he registered as being eligible, as an eligible receiver, but then when he caught the touchdown, the referee waved it off and said that he actually didn't report, and it was made such a big mess. The Lions tried to go for it again. They failed. They tried to score. They failed on multiple two-point attempts, and then it just got like crazy after that point, and it just felt like they were doing too much with it. And now I'm sure both of these two teams definitely remember that, and especially for the Lions, they'd like to get some revenge on the Cowboys as well. And it was just a crazy game last year, and now looking at it this year, the Cowboys are still even more banged up than they were at the beginning of last week. And I don't think this is just a good matchup overall, because the Lions are the epitome of what you don't want to see the Dallas Cowboys playing, right? A great offensive line, a very good running team. You know, they thought they were going to see that with the Steelers, but they haven't really been that. The Lions are the epitome of that, you know, in your face, bullying you, moving you out of the way, while their two running backs have like 6 carries in a row down the field, just right down your throat. And I think in Dallas, the Lions coming off of a bye as well, I think it doesn't really bode well for the Cowboys. And they got the win last week. It was much needed, because I don't think they have any chance in winning this game. So we're going to go with the Lions. The Cowboys fall to 500 again, and it's not going to get any easier going forward. Then the last 2 games here, we're going to go through them pretty quickly. The Falcons, probably going to beat the Panthers. I don't think that's much of a discussion. They're hitting their stride. The Panthers still stuck in a loop. And the last game, the Bengals and the Giants. I kind of struggled this morning picking a winner, but Malik Nabers isn't going to play again. And the Bengals, while the Giants have been impressive, and they certainly impressed everybody winning last week, I can't think that they're just going to beat the Bengals. They got a lot out of Daniel Jones in their last game, and that was great to see. But I think now, I think with this Cincinnati offense and defense, right, I believe that Cincinnati will get to Daniel Jones a lot more. Like, the pass rush is going to get to Daniel Jones a lot more than Seattle was going to be able to. Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, and guys like this, they usually get to the quarterback. They've been one of the more reliable aspects of this team in just the recent games. So if they can get to Daniel Jones, I believe they will, more so than Seattle was able to. I have faith in the Bengals to win this game. If they don't, I have no idea what's going to happen. A lot of bad is going to come for this Cincinnati Bengals teams, but I think they win this game. It's weird because the Giants just showed me a great performance, but no Malik Nabers again. I feel like doing it twice in a row without your best player is a little bit, overextending it now. So we're gonna give it to the Bengals. They'll win. They'll go to 2-4. Same thing as the Giants, I believe. So that'll do it for all the game picks that I have. Let me know what you guys think of my picks, but also share yours as well during the live show, but also afterwards in the comments. And that'll do it for the entire show. Thank you guys for joining me. Please make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as following the network on all forms of social media, and check out the GSMC Sports Network channel on YouTube for more content around this show in a variety of different ways. And also, lastly, tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more coverage around the NFL, headlines, everything, discussions, debates, whatever you guys want, on this show with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Thanking you for joining me. Hopefully you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys back here on Monday to discuss what happens in Week 6.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.